Stop recording.
Hey everyone, this is James, your openly gay blind metalhead. I have another video coming up, and I know it's been a while, so let's get into it. This video is going to be me summarizing an interview that Tuomas Holopainen of Nightwish gave to Metal Hammer magazine on August 19th of this year, 2021. The last video that I did was about another interview that Tuomas gave about just his thoughts on Nightwish and if they'd be able to continue on and just various other topics. Well, in this latest interview, he talks more about things going on with the group, as well as some new stuff going on with his current side project, Ori, that's spelled A-U-R-I. So the interview starts off with Tuomas being asked about the town that him and Nightwish come from, which is called Kaiti over in the country of Finland. And they briefly mention about how that city is basically the moonshine capital of Finland, and they describe Tuomas as giving kind of a a very sour face, and he talks about how he dislikes moonshine. So that was pretty interesting to note. And then Tuomas goes on to talk about his background, as how he got into music, and he mentions that his mother was a piano teacher, and that's how he got into music in general. But even then, he still wanted to do something in the field of science growing up. And then he went on to stay here in the United States when he was, I think, in his late teens, and he started to get into metal music by seeing the concerts live of Guns N' Roses and Metallica. I'd already heard that he had saw a Metallica concert and really got into metal that way. I'd heard about that when I started reading up on Nightwish when I discovered them back in 2011. But in this article was the first time that I heard that Holopainen had went to see Guns N' Roses as well. Yeah, I can only imagine the the intense experience that was, given the typical onstage antics of one William Axl Rose. I think anyone who knows anything about Guns N' Roses will know exactly what I'm talking about. I can only hope that Rose was on his best behavior that night. But when Holopainen saw those two groups, he was blown away and got into metal. And then he goes on to talk about how Nightwish was formed. And they asked him if it was true that it was really formed by him sitting around with a few guys around a campfire, and he said it was. He got together with a few of his friends, and they were sitting around a campfire, grilling sausages and some other food, and they said that, as the story goes, he said that he wanted to start an all acoustic musical group, and they told him to go for it. And then at the same time, he also was conscripted into the army about a week later. For those who don't know, over in Finland, conscription is the way the military is done. Over here in the States, you're able to make the voluntary choice about going into the military, but over in Finland, there's conscription, which basically essentially forces you into the military, in the sense that you have to choose what branch of the military you're going to go into and what jobs you're going to do, unless they end up deciding the job for you. And you can serve, I think it's up to 12 months in the military. So with Tuomas disliking the military, as he mentions in this article, or at least not agreeing with a lot of the violence inherent within the military, he opted to do the band duties for the marching band, and he spent some time doing that. And then he went on to say that when they asked him about if he liked the military or not, he said no, and he said that he doesn't like guns, and that with the exception of sport or hunting, he dislikes guns, and also doesn't understand our gun laws over here in the States about how you can just so easily, almost without a background check, go and purchase a gun, which, yeah, I completely agree with that. And then he goes on to talk about they do touch upon some of the conflicts that he had with Tarja Turunen, the first lead vocalist, who they had to dismiss around 2005, and then also spoke about their dismissal of Annette Olsen in 2013. And Tuomas goes on to talk about those two particular events when they ask him about them, and he basically talks about how those were really, well, particularly the event with Tarja being dismissed. That was a truly dark event for him, and he said that fortunately with the support of his friends and family, he didn't go on to, quote, do anything stupid. And when they asked him what he meant by that, he of course said that he wasn't suicidal or anything like that. Trigger warning for anyone who's sensitive to hearing about stuff like that. Tuomas said that he wasn't suicidal or anything like that. He did have a lot of depression about the events, which I mean is understandable, because from some of the stuff I've read, it does sound like it got to be really acrimonious, to say the least, especially with tabloids creating a lot of really nasty rumors and stuff like that, and of course that couldn't have helped anything. And then when asked if they still keep in contact, him, Annette, or Tarja, he just said that they all at times will keep in contact through emails, but that's really about it. And then he said that while there's still wounds there, they do the best they can to stay on good terms, all of them. And he goes on to talk about how when his dad recently passed away, Tarja was one of the first people to immediately email him and give him condolences, which, yeah, I mean, that's, I think that was a pretty compassionate thing for her to do, and I'm glad to see that they still were able to have enough of a friendship and respect for each other to that she could do that. Some other things that they talked about in the article. Tuomas was asked if he ever regretted anything that he did in his music career, or if he did anything that was ridiculous. He went on to say that there was one time when his frustration levels got to basically to a boil, and he ended up trashing the set backstage at one of the concerts. And obviously, he said he regrets doing it, and I just remember when I read that part of the article, I just remember thinking, wow, well, at least you're among the Hall of Fame of rockers who have trashed things. And then he was asked about, there was, to back up for a minute, Angels Fall First was Nightwish's first album from 1997, and on the two songs, The Carpenter and Astral Romance, Tuomas actually sings some of the male vocals on one of the verses of Astral Romance, and then on then he sings solo on the verses to The Carpenter, and then he sings on the chorus of it with Tarja. And the interviewer does mention that, of course, with all due respect, that Tuomas wasn't really the best singer, and Tuomas agreed, and he said that he was trying to get the lead vocalist from Stradivarius to either the lead vocalist from Stradivarius or Jukka Nivalainen, who was Nightwish's drummer at the time, to do the male parts, but neither one really had any interest in doing them, so Tuomas basically took it upon himself, and then over the next couple of years, until Marco came along, they would pretty much get different men to do male vocals on some of the songs whenever it called for that. An example of that would be Ike Vale from Babylon Whores that did some male vocals for the song The Kinslayer, which was off of Nightwish's 2001 album Wishmaster. So, and then of course, as most who know the history of Nightwish will attest, they ended up getting Marco, who basically took care of the male vocalist problem. And then they go on to kind of revisit what they talked about in one of the previous articles about how at what point did Tuomas think that, okay, this is it, Nightwish isn't going to survive? And he basically said that a lot of the stuff with Tarja really bothered him at the time, but they were still able to go on. But Marco's leaving was really what made him think, at least for a couple of days, that they wouldn't be able to survive as a band, or at least he asked the questions of like what might happen to them as a group. So, but he went on to eventually work past that and continue on as Nightwish. And of course, they were able to solve a lot of those problems with getting Jukka Koskinen, I think that's how you pronounce his name, to do their the bass parts for their tours that they're doing right now. And then Tuomas goes on to talk about how he's already writing material for for Nightwish's 2023 album. So I was pretty interested to hear about that. And then they closed out the interview with talking about the passing of Alexei Laiho of Children of Bodom. Laiho was their, if I remember right, he did both. That's right. He did both lead vocals and lead guitar for Children of Bodom, and he also did lead guitar for an album by the group Synergy. That was the Beware the Heavens album, and he did a lot of pretty good guitar playing on that. And Laiho passed away here not too long ago. I think only a few months ago. And I'd have to read up more about it because I've only read like quick little blurbs about it, so I don't have enough to give a complete video essay about it. But I do know that, for anyone wondering, no, Laiho didn't die of COVID. That wasn't his cause of death. But when Tuomas talks about it in the article, this particular article that I'm talking about, he talks about how he was really devastated to hear about Laiho's death, and that although they didn't talk too often, him and Laiho would talk a little bit on the phone, and then they would get together for just to spend time in person and stuff. And then for the last several months, him and the rest of the members of Nightwish had known that there was something going on with Laiho's health. And then, of course, they got the news that he had passed away, and obviously, like I said, it really was pretty upsetting for them, which, I mean, that's understandable. So that's pretty much the article. It was really interesting to get more of Tuomas' thoughts. And some of my thoughts on the interview, I thought it was really good and really informative. I liked what he had to say about the gun issue. I too think that the issue of guns is pretty well out of control here in the United States. I also don't like how purchasing a gun is almost as easy as going in and buying a new laptop. I think that has a lot of really dangerous implications, especially for abuse victims and various other people. So yeah, glad to see that Tuomas and I are of like minds on that. And then the one thing that he did mention was he talked about, and I think I mentioned this here in the beginning, Tuomas' side project Ori, A-U-R-I, that's made up of Joanna Kirkella vocals, Troy Donicoli of Nightwish, who also does Elan pipes, flutes, and a few other instruments for Ori as well. And then, of course, Tuomas Holopainen on lyrics and keyboards. They released their self-titled album back in 2018, and then he talks about how they're set to release their new album, To Those We Don't Speak Of, on September 3rd, which that's already passed, so that album's out. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about that as well. So I did laugh out loud pretty hard when Tuomas talked about destroying the stage. I think mainly because I a part of me kind of didn't really expect that of him, but again, I mean, that just kind of seems to be something that you tend to see of people who are in that sort of business for them to trash a stage or trash a hotel room or something like that. Axl Rose would certainly know something about that. So yeah, it was a pretty good article. So the next video that I have is, I have a few videos lined up. One is going to be about the passing of Alexi Laiho, and then some of my evolving thoughts on Children of Bodom's music. And then I have the two other videos I have coming up are going to be one in which I talk about Ori's new album, To Those We Don't Speak Of, as well as I mentioned Annette Olson here a few minutes ago, Nightwish's second vocalist before Floyd Hansen took over. And Annette Olson will be releasing an album called Strong here in a couple days, and I've heard some pretty good things about it. So I want to definitely give a video talking about that. So that's pretty much it, and I'll be out with those videos here over the next couple of days. I hope everybody has a good evening. I can be found on both Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, I can be found under James Heady. That's James space Heady. Under Twitter, I can be found as Duran Grey Addict. That's DIRENGREYADDICT. So I hope everybody has a good evening. If you like this video, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.
Stop recording button.